want to welcome you all to the Vocation Lunch, sponsored by the Christensen Center for Vocation. I'm Marty Stortz, and it's my privilege to introduce Carol Enke, this spring's speaker. We've been trying to get her to do this for years. And in a weak moment, and she has some, in a weak moment, she said yes. And she added, I've been around this place for so long, maybe I do have a story. And what a story it is. Carol Enke started coaching softball at Augsburg part-time in 1986, while she was still teaching full-time elementary physical education and adapted PE for students with special needs in the Minneapolis public school system. She joined the Augsburg faculty full-time in 1988 in health and physical education, serving as chair of that department for 6 years and overseeing no less than 3 curricular revisions. She developed multiple courses within the PE major, integrating a service learning component into each one. Carol believes students learn best by getting down and teaching real, and that's a direct quote. She believes that hands-on experience with real students makes for student success. So the schools where Carol once taught are now sites where Augsburg students get their practice teaching. Carol also developed many and various lifetime fitness activity courses, including Ultimate Frisbee and the renowned pickleball. But perhaps the accomplishment of which she is most proud is the lifetime fitness activity course she developed for students with special needs. For lack of institutional imagination, these students had simply been exempt from that requirement, and Carol supplied that imagination and made it possible for this exemption to be lifted. Outside the classroom, off the playing field, and away from supervising students at their placement sites, Carol was inducted into the Janesville, Wisconsin Athletic Hall of Fame in 1995. She collaborated with PE colleagues around in the Mounds View and Bloomington school districts to launch the Augsburg College Sports Extravaganza, a big play day for special events for special needs students grades 3 to 6. She was named West Region Softball Coach of the Year in 1991, and in 2013, she received the Lou Keller Award, honoring outstanding service and contributions to health by a university professional. She's a dedicated runner. I think some of her running buddies came out especially for this. 5K, 10K, half marathon, and full marathon. Finally, Carol lays claim to latent performance talents. With her colleague, Frankie Shackelford, there was that memorable rendition of Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville in honor of Joyce Pfaff's retirement, performed with music, singing, and loud Hawaiian print shirts. It lives in memory. And most of us know Carol as coach. Now spearheading the Tommy's Augies Challenge, she cheers us all on. Play is important to Carol, as you see on the projector. And it's not just as a verb or a gerund, as in to play or playing pickleball. Play is a habit of life, which supplies the necessary ingredients of health, flourishing, and dare I say, joy. Help me welcome Carol Enke.
It was much easier sitting down there. Thanks, Marty, and thanks to all of you for being here today. Who remembers these? Tell the truth. Raise your hand. 45s. Stay in your chairs. Give yourselves a little room. And let's move.
Every morning.
Let's do it. Come on, let's go. Let's go. More Tommy minutes against them. Let's go. Why you wore your tennis shoes, Don. That should have been your first hint. Here we go. If you know the words, sing 10 times. Woo! At least my mom didn't use swear words. My dad would have. I had no clue what I was supposed to be doing at recess if I wasn't playing kickball or football. I certainly had no idea what the girls were doing at recess. If I had to guess, though, they were probably yakking. And really, as you've noticed, nothing moves but your mouth when you yak. When I finished my softball playing career and degree at the University of Minnesota, I always wanted to track down Mrs. Knipp and let her know that playing sports and doing unladylike things, in her opinion, paid for my 4 years of college, not to mention the many memories and opportunities as a result of being a student athlete. I never did, though. My mom played fast-pitch softball in small-town Wisconsin with her sisters. She loved the game. When softball was added my junior year of high school, she would be my catcher without a glove while I practiced pitching. She had never grown up using a glove. Either she was tough or I really wasn't that good. Or perhaps both. With her children and grandchildren, she'd go out in the yard with a bat, ball, and play. She always bought us yard games. Remember that game, jarts? Or darts, and then they had to call it jarts because we'd injure ourselves with the points or something. I don't know. But most anything we'd play, she'd do that with us. My dad wasn't quite so athletic. If I remember right, he pulled a hamstring at my youngest brother Gary's Little League baseball game of players versus parents. That was it for him. However, he was great at replacing broken windows and anything else we damaged. From basketballs, baseballs, or anything else we happened to be hurling around the house. That was inside or outside. I grew up in an era where if you wanted to play 3 sports during high school, you played 3 sports. There was very little overlap in seasons, and summers were just that. Summers were for one to be and play and do whatever one wanted. Also in the summers, my 2 oldest brothers, Lyle and Rod, who were 12 and 11 years older than me, would let me tag along to their slow-pitch softball games. Oops, once again, I was hanging out with the guys and not acting very ladylike. I loved shagging softballs while their teams took batting practice before games. It's not surprising that my first summer job at age 16 again involved doing something physical, teaching swim lessons and lifeguarding. And thinking about this, I have only had one job that didn't involve playing. My mom got me hired at a factory that she worked at that made axles for cars and trucks for one summer. One summer, and I knew why I was going to college. My next job was once again teaching swim lessons and lifeguarding, this time at the Brooklyn Center Civic Center. I had the opportunity to work with infants and even taught a 70-year-old how to swim. I even got him to go off the high dive. So you think you have it bad when I rag on you to be, exercising and getting minutes? I had this guy 10 feet up in the air. Eventually, I was hired to work at Van Cleve Park, and Gary Hesser and I were just talking about that, so I've known Gary for a long time. I was able to run a program called Tiny Tots for children who were 3 to 4 years old. Amidst working with other programs, I once again reverted back to unladylike behavior. I umpired the boys' baseball games. I began my teaching career in Minneapolis public schools, and I loved every minute of it. My last year in Minneapolis, I was teaching at 5 different elementary schools, teaching elementary physical education, and as Marty mentioned, teaching developmental adapted physical education. At the same time, I was working on my master's at the University of Minnesota and was a stipend softball coach here at Augsburg. I wish I had my pay stub. I'd like to know what I made back then. Joyce Paff, retired HPE faculty member, was leaving to go to the Caribbean. She's going to sail her boat down there and retire. So that September, she started kind of gnawing on me a little bit, saying, oh, you should take the job at Augsburg. It's great. It's wonderful. and I ignored her for a long time. And it ended up being one of the toughest decisions I ever had to make. I loved teaching elementary students. I loved teaching students with special needs. When we'd go for an occasional run, Joyce would hound me about taking the job, so I didn't run with her very much during those months. Although Augsburg offered me the job in April, I didn't commit until July, and even then, I wasn't sure it was the right decision. And now, as my Minneapolis classroom and Phi-Ed colleagues are retiring, I'm still not sure it was the right decision. I still have several years to go before I can say the R word. When I left Minneapolis for Augsburg, I took a $7,000 pay cut. I think that gap has doubled, maybe tripled, in the 26 years I've been here. That's a joke, laugh, laugh. Although it was the toughest decision I made 26 years ago, I do believe it was the right decision. Part of the reason I took the job was for 3 years I had been pink-slipped in Minneapolis. I was low on the chain of command, and Carol got a pink slip every year. The other reason, I was tired of being on a treadmill. And those of you that know me, I can't stand a treadmill. I went from school to school to school to teach, to Augsburg to coach, to the University of Minnesota to finish my master's, home to bed, and get up the next day and do the same thing. So many things ran through my head as I debated whether or not to take the Augsburg job. I wanted to continue to make a positive impact on elementary children and turn them on to exercise at an early age with the hope that it would become a lifestyle for them. I wanted to reach them before they decided they didn't like physical activity or had bad experiences with physical activity. Hint, not all physical educators are created equal. I wanted to show them how much fun exercising could be and all the various ways their bodies could move. I wanted to teach them about their muscles and how they worked to make them healthier. And I absolutely loved the innocence and honesty of elementary children. One story that I always share with my students is about a little blonde-haired girl at Jefferson Open, that's why she got to call me Carol, Jefferson Open Elementary. These students only had physical education 1 day per week, and it was at 8 a.m. on a Monday. So as this little girl enters the gym, she looks at me and she says, "Carol, I like your hair so much better today than last week." My immediate thought was, good Lord, what did my hair look like last week? I typically got out for a run and a shower before I headed to Jefferson, so it wasn't like I just rolled out of bed and sprinted into the school to teach. That kindergartner had me puzzled for a good 15 minutes. As we were running to the Muffin Man, who knows the Muffin Man? Do you know the Muffin? Great, yep, very good. I finally realized what she was talking about. In the past 7 days since she had seen me, I'd gotten my hair cut, and this little 5 or 6 year old noticed that. So I knew if I took the Augsburg job, I would miss the honesty, innocence, and bluntness of elementary children. I really wasn't sure I wanted to give up my chance to make an impact on children at a young age. As I thought about this, and seriously, I've never thought about it until writing this talk, perhaps it's better that I am here, because maybe, just maybe, I'm making an even bigger impact and reaching more children by working to develop our physical education majors into contributing professionals. Hundreds of Augies can make more of an impact than one of me. When I finally decided to take the job, one of my courses was lifeguard training at the Fairview Pool over here, which no longer exists. That class met at 6:30 in the morning on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The only good thing about teaching at that hour was it was the therapy pool, so the water temperature was about 100 degrees. There was no dipping your toes to check, you just got right in. I also taught and still teach elementary PE methods for the classroom teachers, Intro to Developmental Adapted PE, and I initially taught, I don't even know how you spell this word, a gazillion lifetime activities. In some ways, I felt like I was still in the public schools. It took 4 of those little bugger lifetime activities to equal 1/7. That's not a typo, yes, we used to be on 7ths here, so our full load was 7/7. In teaching the PE methods for classroom teachers, I remember asking Dick Borstead, department chair at that time, where the equipment was. And he said, oh, we borrow soccer balls from the soccer team, we borrow basketballs from the basketball team. Whoa, 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 wait a minute, Dick. Elementary phyed is so much more than soccer and basketball. Elementary children are not to be treated like little miniature athletes. They are children. Physical education is not athletics. I'm going to repeat that. Physical education is not athletics. Not only did we not have any physical education equipment, we didn't have a stereo or a boom box, as you would have called it back then. How do you teach physical education without a boom box? I asked what we had for a budget, for equipment, and I remember him pulling the budget sheet out of the equipment, or out of his drawer, and the equipment budget line read, 0. And I don't even have to tell you the next part. It's not much more than what we have today. I know you're thinking it because you laughed. I remember thinking, how can we play if we don't have any equipment? But it didn't take me long to remember. I'd taught in a gazillion schools in Minneapolis. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I drove my little 1985 Cavalier over to Bancroft Elementary, loaded that thing up with scoops, hooters, scoops, whoop, hula hoops, hula hoops. That was good. Woo. That's why you should look at your notes. Woo. Okay, let me try that. Scoops, hula hoops, I'm not sweating yet. Bean bags, whatever they needed. Whatever they needed, I loaded it up, brought it back here. Eventually, dance, which was part of the PE major, was added to my load. We played a lot in there. We did everything from teaching creative dance to square dancing to line dancing. Thankfully, this was before hip hop. I would have had to get a guest speaker. Over the next several years, the PE licensure needed to be revamped, so I took it upon myself to do that, which gave me then the opportunity to teach additional classes. All of the classes that were added had a service learning, or what I call play component. What better way to learn how to teach than to actually teach real students, long before student teaching. Best practices work best when the situation is real. In the 26 years I've taught, my teaching load has done a 180. Now the vast majority of my classes are classes in the major with a few lifetime activities. As Marty mentioned too, prior to my being hired at Augsburg, students with special needs got out of the lifetime activity requirement. They would come to this side of campus, go to that building, if they had a disability, and it was signed off that they didn't need to fulfill the lifetime activity requirement. When Joyce returned to teaching part-time a few years later, she got tired of that sailing gig. She figured she could use my expertise with students with special needs. We created a course called Adapted Physical Education, so now no one, I repeat, no one, gets out of the lifetime activity requirement. Several years ago, an Augsburg student, Kevin Taylor, who was living in Washington State and finishing his degree with a couple of online courses, he also needed to complete a lifetime activity course and didn't have any real options for doing this in Washington, and he certainly didn't have the option to come to campus. Long story short, I monitored the course using Skype. Skype had just been invented, so this was an absolute genius move. He was in a wheelchair, so he'd wheel himself into his garage, turn on his computer, pedal his arm bike, and when he was done with that, he lifted weights. Using Skype, I could monitor his workouts, but better yet, he could complete his degree. In corresponding with him recently, he commented, "It's still one of my very favorite memories of all my education." Dr. Mary Lampe had a huge impact on my learning style and later my teaching style. She had tons of energy and was very passionate about the profession. I'm guessing she was in her 60s. Doesn't that sound old? 60? 60? No, I know it's getting closer. When she was my professor, but you would have thought she was one of us, her students. In her classes, she jumped right in and moved with us. Her classes were applicable to what all of us would be doing someday, teaching through movement. Many students who major in physical education and exercise science are kinesthetic learners. They learn by doing. They learn best by being physically immersed in the subject matter. Of course, my undergrad work was long before PowerPoints, but I do not ever remember Mrs. L using an overhead to teach. I do remember classes where it was overhead, scramble, take a bunch of notes, overhead, scramble, take a bunch of notes. Needless to say, I was bored in those classes. Also needless to say, those weren't my highest grades. Mrs. L certainly knew how to keep us on our toes and actively engaged in our learning. She was able to educate us on course content through being physically active and was an incredible role model for her students. As I have grown and continue to grow into my role as teacher, mentor, I have modeled more of her methods than any other professor. I'd like to think that if she were still alive, our teaching styles would be similar. I definitely learn best by doing. My classes revolve around learning by doing, or again, what I call play. We can only learn so much through observation. I contend that we can read all we want about effective discipline, classroom management, what a good lesson should look like. But until one is right in the middle of the action and needing to make a split-second decision, it doesn't make any sense. I'd like to share some comments a student made in a paper reflecting his experience teaching kindergartners in an elementary PE methods class. One of the most memorable experiences I had while at Loring was when I lost total control of the class. After spending numerous hours in college learning how to teach and a lot of time working on lesson plans, including how to incorporate objectives, I still was not prepared for what would happen. The same experience turned out to also be one of the best learning tools I have had and plays into my concrete sequential learning style. Everything was going well for me as the students were following directions and instructions while having fun as they did that. Imagine that. I was following my lesson plan exactly. I came to the next step, which was to have students line up on a specific line in order to move them as one big unit. Big mistake, my comment. The students either did not understand my directions or maybe they didn't feel like listening. But for whatever reason, I lost control. In what seemed like the blink of an eye, the class turned from organized and controlled to chaos. This is my favorite part. The students became the teacher, and I, the teacher, became the student, as they were now teaching me more than I was teaching them. I tried everything I learned in all the books I read and thought back to all the people who had given me advice. None of that made any difference. The only thing that could have helped me in this situation was experience. In physical education, we educate through the physical domain. Our goal is to get students, faculty and staff, up and moving. We educate through movement. It is so different, and dare I say challenging, than teaching a lesson in the classroom. Children love wide open spaces, and liability is huge. Long before they ever go to school, toddlers and children learn through play and interacting with their environment. It is part of their natural being. I don't think I've ever grown out of this stage. In observing student teachers, I've ridden my bicycle to various schools to complete these observations. I have been paid to canoe, bicycle, ice fish, you name it. Perfect while doing these observations. And when appropriate, jumped in when a student needed a partner for any activity. In teaching lifetime activities, I am always disappointed when an even number of students show up. Can't somebody be gone today so I can play? In developing the Weekend College Lifetime Activity Hybrid course, I knew the content, but Nathan Lind knew Moodle. I was initially against the hybrid model for this class, but then at some point I came around to thinking that the model we had of students working out one time per week for 2 hours because of facility and schedule issues really wasn't a recipe for success. In addition to the adapted physical education course, the hybrid version of lifetime activities for our adult population may perhaps be one of the coolest courses I have ever developed. It allows our adult population to work out when it is convenient for them, engaging them in activities they enjoy within the course of their day, and hopefully shows them that it is possible to make me time for themselves. The sports extravaganza is a cool invention too. This came about as a result of a woman I went to grad school with. She said, Carol, can we use your dome? I want to bring students over with special needs to have a big play day. I said, Nancy, you get the elementary kids here. I said, and I'll get the Augies here to teach. It's been an even bigger success than either of us imagined. In the 13 years we have held this event, we have averaged over 200 students with special needs each year in the dome. 9 years ago, the FTE to coaching was going to change from 28% to 70%. I was asked, what classes did I want to give up? Excuse me? None. Since I revamped the major, I felt ownership of many of these classes. Although I started my career at Augsburg as a part-time softball coach, I personally could not be that one-dimensional. I still had a strong passion for coaching, but asking me to choose which courses I didn't want to teach. In coaching, I always told my student athletes that life is about balance. I never expected them to live, eat, and breathe the game because I couldn't live, eat, and breathe the game. I was blessed to have coached student athletes who were good people from good families. And speaking of family, when family comes to town or I head to Wisconsin, we always need to be doing something physically active, and that includes the big ones and the little ones. I bought a Burley from Benji, and I put a ton of miles on that thing, running, walking, biking with the great nephews. For years, when my nieces Erica and Janelle were younger, I would sign them up and we'd do the reindeer run, and an occasional race here and there. To this day, they still enjoy it. Now that they're older and they have their own families, the reindeer run has become a family affair every December. We toss the littlest ones in the Burley, and off we go around Lake Harriet for a little 5K jaunt. The oldest three great-nephews come to the cities for a week in the summer. The first year they visited, we hiked, biked, swam, ran, kayaked, played catch. And I was preparing to hand them back to their parents in Wisconsin. Jake, the 11-year-old, looked at me and asked, Aunt Carol, what are we going to do next year? Next year, Jake? Next year was 364 days away. My goal was to recover from the past week. Whether teaching or spending time with family and friends, play is an integral part of who I am. Before I make you move again and close, I'd like to thank all of my students, and Mel's one of them here, past and present, for challenging me to discover more ways for them to play in a profession that values play at all ages and abilities. And of course, my playmates that are here today. My sister Kathy and brother-in-law, Dave, came in town. Dave was actually my junior high math teacher. And he's lived to tell about it. They made the trek from Janesville, Wisconsin, just for the free meal. Retired people will do most anything for a free meal. Dave is my week-long plus golf mate. In the summer, he and Kathy come in town for a week or so. We play 18 days every day at a different course. If you want to do that, give me a yell. You can go with us. But we go early. We go early, we move, and we get on to shopping, which is Kathy's favorite. This thing, which way is up on this thing? Mike, I should ask you. Kathy, whenever we're together, there's rarely a day that goes by that we don't play. We were off swimming this morning. Weights, run, bike, swim, you name it, we're moving. Pam Schurz, Joanne Andrick, Dixie Olstead. Pam and Dixie are retired. Joanne will be in 3 months. We have traveled many, many miles together, on foot, wheels, water. We are almost always in for any physical challenge. Lots of people get together to go to lunch or dinner. We get together to move. And since they're all older than me, my goal is to keep them all moving for a very, very, very long time. I can only push one wheelchair, and Joanne has dibs on that. Maybe I can get one of those things like they have at daycare and put all three of them. Tracy Bibelnix, my biggest whining playmate. If you ever get a chance to work out with Tracy, add an additional 30 minutes to the time you think it will take. The advantage to her whining, though, is that you get lots of extra breaks. And by the way, Tracy was the instigator. for the dopey challenge that 3 of us did. Dun, 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 dun. Ann Garvey, my pickleball playmate. We beat each other up a lot in the gym. In the 15 years since I taught Ann to play this great game, we have played 536 games of pickleball and hosted the Augsburg College Pickleball Open for 11 years. 12's coming up. If you want to be part of the best thing on this campus, give us a yell. Okay, before I close, I'm going to make you move one more time. No moaning, no groaning. Stand up, give yourselves a little bit of room. And this is awesome. And who was it? Tina and, who was out there? Tina and who was with you? I don't remember. But here we go.
2, please. 1 for me, 1 for you.
One ticket for him and one
It's
for
sweating
us.
time.
Here we go.
Come on. Oh, get that body going. 1, 2. Oh yeah, 4 more. Take it up higher. 4 more. Guitar time.
I'm sweating now.
Give me some love. Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Give me those hands now. All the way. That's it. Couple more.
I'm not done yet. Yeah, I'm not done yet. I'm not done. I really do look at my position here as one that allows me to play every day, working with students, faculty, and staff in a variety of arenas to encourage physical activity. The service learning experiences I set up for the physical education majors allow them to teach through movement. They are afforded the opportunity to educate themselves and their students through the physical domain. I continue to tell them that when they get their first teaching job, and for the next 30 years, it will be the closest they come to being a professional athlete. Of course, they have no idea what I'm talking about. But then I tell them, like me, they will be playing to get paid. In closing, last fall there was an 86-year-old retired physical education teacher, Joy Johnson, who died a day after completing her 25th straight New York City marathon. When questioned about still running into her 80s, she always said, "I'm going to die with my tennis shoes on." And she did. My game plan is to die the same way. When that day comes, how can I not find them? They're size 10s. Toss my tennis shoes. Here's my other little prop. And a lesson plan form in with me. At your tables, you have some quotes, and I actually forgot we were doing that till I came in today. But here's the one I really want to leave you with, if I push this clicker the right way, otherwise we're doing Richard again. Ooh. The end.
Thank you so much for coming, and I want to thank Carol's family, especially for being here. We may have a couple of minutes for questions, if there are any questions anyone would like to ask. Carol has agreed to take questions. Now we're all sweating.
And we do have a microphone if somebody does want to ask a question that you want to raise your hand.
Oh, come on, you're acting like our students. Tracy. Oh, geez.
Can you clarify? I might have instigated the doping, but can you clarify who finalized the deal?
It was a weak moment, yes. The dopey. Yeah, Tracy sent me an email last May. She wasn't teaching, obviously. Let's do dopey. Well, maybe it was really early, way before it was due. Let's do dopey, and I said, oh, no. We agreed we'd do goofy. Goofy was just the half and the full. We agreed we'd do that when Pam retired her first year because Tracy and I could stay a little longer because our semester didn't start. Pam started earlier. So then we talk about it, and then I think, wait a minute, this is really stupid. Because I realized goofy was part of dopey, and you could get all these medals in just 4 days. $500 to sign up, a $500 plane ticket, whatever. So I called Tracy back and I go, I was just thinking this is really stupid. We just need to do it all at once. Tracy goes, yeah, because I told you, I only have 1 marathon in me. Truth be told, Tracy said she never had a marathon in her. So long story short, we're on the phone that night. I said, let's think about this overnight. Pam says, oh, she got on the computer. Well, dopey is 76% full. Okay, let's sign up. So, I mean, that's how dopey evolved. So, anything else? Any other questions? Yeah, Jean.
So the order as you do it is increasing mileage every day?
Yep. Increasing mileage, watching what you eat, watching the color of your urine, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, making sure you don't eat foods that may not agree with your digestive system, like jalapenos, Tracy. Anybody else? Do you have any questions? Yeah, Mary.
I just want to report that Frank Shackelford and I saw Gene Simmons and met him in Miami at a conference. He was on the street, but...
I should have put you two up here. Yeah, Gene or yeah. Richard. Gene Simmons is from KISS. He's got the long tongue. Same family. Okay. Yeah, Gary.
When you look ahead, what are some dreams you have for yourself, but also for the field? What are
Truth be told, Gary, after I finished Dopies, I said I could die because what else could there possibly be? Well, to keep it short, I think to get physical education back in the schools more. That keeps getting cut as a result of budget, and it's not academic, and we don't have an academic score for it. Well, if we did physical fitness testing and did body fat testing, how much more academic is that? So, I think that's probably one of my obviously, one of my passions is to get kids physically active. So, okay. Somebody else had their hand up over here. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask the same thing. What can we all do around the arts, right, and physical education in the schools?
Yank your principal's chain if her name isn't Mrs. Knipp. Seriously, be an advocate for your children. Those of you that have children, be an advocate. I have alums out there, and they say, parents have come in and said, I want my kids to have FIAD 3 days a week. I want this. Parents are big advocates. Get the classroom teachers on board with you. Management, discipline. If we can get them in the gym moving, get them outside moving, it's a whole lot less and a whole lot more learning goes on. There's plenty of research out there about that. So, and those of you who have desk jobs and you say, oh, I don't have time to do the St. Thomas Challenge, look at that. Look at that. We did chicken fat, sitting in your chairs. So, yep, Doug.
You mentioned Title IX in passing and what it meant to you, but just in terms of what you've seen at the college over the time you've been here, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. When I first came here, there was a fight over using the gym. We couldn't put volleyball lines down because it was the basketball court. In terms of travel, in terms of budget, just in terms of supplies, equipment that we had, things weren't equal. Joyce was a major advocate for that, fought a lot to get women on the same playing field. Women's teams used the same uniforms. You know, somebody using, what's that sport in the fall? Volleyball. Volleyball, basketball, and softball would use the same uniforms. The men, you know, they all had their own sets of uniforms. Locker rooms weren't equal. I mean, it's, you know, it's come a long way. We still have a long way to go in a lot of respects on all campuses, I think. So that's a good question. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Leslie, thank you. Leslie got this organized from Event Services. Oh, no, that's right. Event and Conference Planning. So thank you all.
Yeah, I want to thank Lana Field for setting this up and the Christensen Center for putting this on. And now we want to thank Carol for her strong moments and her weak ones.